Right then, welcome to this briefing. We're going to walk you through the statutory guidance for inspecting dry cleaners here in the UK. Think of this as your practical guide to get you fully prepped for a site visit. So here's what we'll be covering. First, we'll look at your statutory guidance. Then we'll peek inside the machine. We'll nail down the key emission limit, figure out how to be calculating compliance, and finally run through your inspection checklist. Simple as that. Okay, let's dive right in. Section 1. Your statutory guidance. This is all about understanding the legal basis for your inspection. The first thing to get your head around is that this is a UK-wide statutory note. It's issued by the Secretary of State, the Scottish and Welsh governments, and the Department of the Environment in Northern Ireland, so you've got a really consistent framework to regulate against, no matter where you are. So the whole regulatory framework is built around what's called Best Available Techniques, or BAT for short. It's all about making sure regulation is consistent and transparent. What's considered BAT for one dry cleaner should be BAT for a similar one. Now, just a little heads up, for some specific solvents in England, it's actually the Industrial Emissions Directive that applies instead, so keep an eye out for that. So what's this all really about? Well, it boils down to one thing: controlling volatile organic compound emissions, or VOCs. This guidance puts into UK law Chapter 5 of the EU Industrial Emissions Directive. The bottom line is, your inspection is all about making sure those VOCs are kept in check. Right, on to Section 2, inside the machine. Let's get practical now and have a look at the dry cleaning process itself. This will help you understand all those potential emission points. Okay, so what you're looking at here is a typical closed-circuit machine. And honestly, most of the ones you'll see in the UK are this type. They'll be using solvents like PER, hydrocarbon, or maybe siloxane. You can see all the key bits and pieces here: the tanks, the still, the cage, filters, condenser, all of it. First up is the filter wash cycle. The solvent gets pumped from the tank, it circulates through the cage where the clothes are, through a button trap and a pump, and then it passes through a filter. This is where all the dirt and grime gets trapped. So what about that contaminated solvent? Well, it gets pumped over to the still. Here, it's heated up until it turns into a vapor, which is then cooled in a condenser, and bingo, it's back to being clean solvent in the tank. This whole distillation cycle is a really key process for recovering the solvent. And then we have the drying cycle. This is where hot air sucks up the solvent from the garments. That air is then cooled down, which condenses the solvent, and it gets returned to the separator. This is absolutely critical for making sure you don't lose a load of solvent from the clean clothes. Right. And this is what it's all about for you. These are the key potential leak points. We're talking door seals, the filter housing, solvent pipe flanges. These are the spots where those sneaky fugitive emissions are most likely to happen. So these are the places you'll need to be physically inspecting. Which brings us neatly to Section 3, the key emission limit. This is the single most important compliance figure you need to know. And here it is, 20. 20 grams of solvent per kilogram of product cleaned and dried. This is the total emission limit value, and it's measured annually. Everything boils down to meeting this number. So that 20-gram limit translates into these equivalent emission limits you see here. For perchloroethylene, or PER, that means they need to be cleaning 80 kilos of product for every liter of solvent emitted. For hydrocarbons and siloxanes, it's 48.5 kilos per liter. The operator's records absolutely must show that they are meeting, or even better, exceeding these figures. Okay, Section 4, calculating compliance. So how do you actually check they're on the right side of the line? Well, it's all about auditing the operator's records. The operator has to use a mass balance approach, which is laid out in their solvent management plan. Basically, you track all the solvent inputs, that's I1, and you compare them against the weight of the products cleaned. You also have to account for the outputs, like fugitive releases O4, and the solvent that's left in the waste, which is O8. Now, a really important part of that calculation is applying the right factor for the solvent that's left in the waste. And which factor you use depends entirely on how the residue is removed. As you can see, it could be 0.15 for a powder filter rakeout, or all the way up to 0.50 for a plumbed pump-out system. You need to make sure they're using the right one. So, when you review their annual return, you'll be checking this 4-step calculation from Appendix 4. First, you sum up the monthly totals for the weight of clothes cleaned and the net solvent used. Then you add a spot cleaning correction factor to get the total solvent input. After that, you divide the total weight cleaned by that total solvent input. That gives you the solvent efficiency. And finally, you divide the solvent's specific gravity by that efficiency to get your final emission figure in grams per kilo. And that's the number that has to be under 20. And finally, Section 5, your inspection checklist. Let's pull all of this together into some key practical checks for when you're on site. A huge part of your job on site is just verifying these routine maintenance tasks. Are they wiping the door seals daily? Are they cleaning the button trap and lint filters? Are they emptying the still weekly, draining the water separator biweekly, and are they replacing those door seals annually? Things like checking for leaks after maintenance on pumps or filters is also crucial. It's all about minimizing solvent loss and ensuring compliance. And look, remember that simple observations are incredibly powerful. As the guidance itself states, a very strong solvent odor associated with the load indicates that the solvent recovery process may not have been optimized. So if you open that machine door and get a huge whiff of solvent, that's a massive clue that there could be a problem. So there you have it. Armed with this guidance, you are absolutely prepared to go out there and confidently assess whether the dry cleaners in your area are operating safely and, crucially, within their legal limits. The only question is, are they?